my goodness. So tell us a bit about yourself and welcome to my podcast that doesn't have a name at the moment.
Okay, well, whew, my name's Bridget. I was an SDA for better part of 40 years. No, it wasn't quite 40 years. It was about 38, 37, maybe 38.
Wow.
Yeah, it was there a long time, and I battled for a long time because I
Yeah,
never really felt like I fitted in, and I
yeah,
battled with it, thinking it's all me, it's my fault, it's all about me, and then realized one day it really wasn't me. You know,
yeah,
whatever I did, they were never going to accept me. So the best thing to do was to leave,
yeah.
and as I left, life got so much better. I felt so.
First, yeah. First of all, I didn't know that you were more than 38. What do you mean? You look so good.
Black doesn't crack, as they say.
True, 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 true.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna be 51 in September. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's good for me to say because I wasn't looking forward to 50. In fact, I ignored 50.
Yeah,
Everybody else celebrates, and I just went, yeah, it's my birthday. My
yeah.
birthday. But now I'm feeling a bit better about it. So I can say, yes, I'll be 51 in September.
Oh my, no way. Oh my, if I look half as good as you when I'm 51, I'd be very happy.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my God. Wow. Congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
happy birthday in advance. And congratulations on leaving and trusting your instinct.
Mm.
And how did you get to that point? Like, what was the breaking point? And like, or was it just a continuous
I
thing
think
that
I
you,
think it was a continuous thing. Little things kept happening. And then I think for me, the reason why I left was more about people's attitude. Not so much attitude, the way people were treating me
yeah,
and the way people were treating other people. And I just didn't like the vibe of that. And that's eventually was just like I can't even tell you what it was because I don't think I've ever sat and thought what was the final straw. I just thought one day, why am I doing this? And I just didn't go one Saturday. And then I didn't go the next. And then I didn't go the next. And then I didn't go the next until I thought, I'm really enjoying this not going to church, full stop. And then that was it. I just stopped completely.
wow. And did you, so initially when you left, did you did you feel guilt at all, or did you feel like your Saturdays were empty? Like,
I didn't feel they were empty because they never felt full anyway. I
okay,
think I think I tried to fill them with lots of different things when I was at church. Do you know what
yeah,
church is like? You get there at 10
yeah,
o'clock and you don't leave until sometimes 8, 9 o'clock, depending on what's
yeah,
going on. So
yeah,
there's lots and lots of stuff going on.
yeah,
But me personally, I didn't feel, I mean, you go to church sometimes and there'll be the sermon. I mean, I think the best thing about church was for me was praise and worship. Once that was done, I wasn't interested anymore. So, I wasn't being fulfilled anyway. I
yeah,
was I was just going through the motions because it looked worse to not be there than be there.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so when I left, I didn't feel I was missing something. I felt
yeah,
like I gained something because I felt more, well, I wasn't being judged every week for starters,
yeah,
and I felt able to relax
yeah,
and not be bothered by what people might be thinking or saying or doing
yeah,
because I didn't see them.
yeah, yeah,
So it was quite liberating.
yeah.
So
And what kinds of things did you feel judged on? I have a whole list of my stuff.
everything, I think everything. I think the way I dressed, and it's really
Mhm.
funny because when I look back at pictures of me, I look at pictures and think, why did I look like an old granny when I was so young? Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I thought at the time I was like cutting edge of fashion and that I was doing really, really well. But then when I look at the pictures, I look back at the pictures and I just thought, no, what was I wearing? Why was I wearing that? And it comes down to because it was expected, You know, I remember once I had a blue suit and it was a skirt suit. And I wore it one week and I heard people whispering, "Why is that skirt so short? That skirt's far too short." And it was, yes, it was over the knee, but it wasn't that short.
Yeah.
Let's go forward about 10 years.
Yeah.
People that were complaining about the length of my skirt by that time had a niece who was probably about my age at the time when they were complaining about me. And her skirt was even shorter than my skirt, yet they won't say anything about her skirt.
Yeah. It's the double standards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's those sort of things that really made me not want to be in church anymore. I hated it. Like you said,
Yeah.
I was a bit that hated. You know,
Yeah.
like your face fitted, and then it was fine. You could do almost anything, and you'd
Yeah.
be okay.
Yeah.
But for some strange reason, I just never seemed to fit.
Yeah.
I came from a very small church anyway, where there was nobody my age. Well, I shouldn't say there wasn't anybody. There was people my age. Unfortunately, they were all boys. So I
Yeah.
grew up being the only girl. So
Yeah.
I feel very lonely anyway in church
Yeah.
because nobody ever that I could ever really relate to. I never really had a friend at church. And even when we got older as teenagers and we started going from church to church, I never had anybody to go to church with. So it took a long time for me to build friendships with girls
Yeah.
in other places
Yeah.
because I never had the opportunity. I was always very isolated anyway. And then
Yeah.
when you don't fit as well, it makes it 10 times worse.
Yeah, I agree. I think, if you don't belong somewhere, then you try to fit in, but by fitting in, you start denying yourself and, start losing pieces of yourself. But it never quite becomes
No.
home, it never becomes home. So what generation Adventist were you? Were you like, were your parents Adventists, their parents Adventists, or?
Yeah, this is a very interesting story. My grandfather, my dad's dad,
Yeah.
was apparently a big pioneer, I should say, of the church in Barbados. He's very famous, big name. Da, 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 da. Everybody knows who he is. So
Yeah.
he was a big name.
Yeah.
My dad then came to England. I don't think he was intending to stick around church. When he got to church, like I said, it was a very small congregation, lots of
Yeah.
old people. He was a young man of about 21. So they just latched onto him. Yeah, he became elder very quickly, and then he just got sucked into church, and he ended up staying. Of course, he met my mom. Of course, children came. There's four of us. We all came along, and that's it. He ended up sticking there, and we all stuck there. We all stuck there for as long as we could in our
Yeah.
own. So, yeah, in Barbados, we're kind of royalty. Here, not so much. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would be third generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So my family became Adventist when I was about
Mm.
six-ish, five, maybe five, six. And the church, I think they've moved it now, but the church was built on my grandmother's land.
Right.
So yeah, so my aunt, which is really interesting for me now because that aunt is very antagonistic and, no empathy, just,
Mm.
and she's the one who became Adventist and kept telling everybody that they had to become Adventist. And I remember my mom, who I didn't see often, I'd see her like once a year or whatever, but I remember her complaining and saying that she has to put pillows around her ears to stop my aunt from telling her about the Adventist church. But
Mm.
eventually she gave in, and they all gave in. We all became vegetarian, mostly vegetarian. And I remember my granny used to have pigs. She was a farmer, so she had
Yeah.
lots of different animals, got rid of the pigs, and
Wow.
we started drinking just soya. So you remember the soya
Oh,
powder
yeah.
and hot chocolate, drink hot chocolate. But it was just like it completely changed our whole lives. We were Catholic before that,
Mm.
and there was before they built the church, we worshipped under a tree. Um, because we had no church building, and then we rented a room from the clinic, the mini hospital,
Mm.
and then back to the tree again, and then eventually we did raise some money to build the local church,
Yeah.
which my mom and her sisters who were living in
Mm.
Nairobi, funded. But to me now, it's just interesting to be like, I don't know, I probably would have just been first generation, but to see the person that brought
Mm.
Adventism, like for
Yeah.
me, that is a big, you know,
Opener.
uh, yeah, I'm just like, oh, it makes sense. At least the form of Adventism that we got, it was very fear-based and
Mm.
and shame-based. So I didn't know when I met really progressive Adventists in America, I was like, oh, it's possible, like like what's happening. So yeah, but interesting. So is anyone else in your family still at church in England?
In our family, just my sister.
Just your
My
sister?
oldest brother, my oldest brother was sensible. I said that now. At the time, I thought it was such a scandal when he left church. He left church
Yeah.
when he was about 18, maybe 16,
Wow.
18, 16, 18. He left and he left and he never came back under any circumstances.
Wow.
Um, my other brother, he went to study in London and he just kind of slipped away quietly. And then yeah, then I eventually had enough. But my
Yeah.
sister, the last one of us standing.
The last one. So, and when you were in the church, did you hold any positions? And as a woman, did you ever feel like you couldn't hold any position in the
I think the
church?
I think the best thing about the church that I came from, because it was so small, I got to do literally everything. I've held every post, including deaconess, which is the one that usually go to all the old women. Well, I was deaconess. Was I head deaconess at some point? But I wasn't head deacon. I might be deputy deaconess. So I think I've held more or less all the posts in church
Yeah.
except elder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
never went that high up, but yeah. I've,
And did they ever have women as elders?
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
That's what I'm saying, because it was such a small church and because it's
everybody.
women, they
Yeah,
had no choice. So we all got a turn, and that's like I said, that's the best thing about it.
yeah,
I wasn't discouraged from trying anything. I could try
yeah,
anything,
yeah,
because there was nobody else. If we didn't do it, it wasn't going to happen. And you wouldn't
yeah,
just have one post, you might have two or three posts as well,
yeah.
because it was so small. I mean, now they've got a bigger congregation now, but at the
Mhm.
time there wasn't many of us at all.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, because you know my story with the church, and I think that was the thing that really pushed me to leave. Like I think I don't know if you've heard of the shelf where, you know,
Mm,
if you're in a relationship and it's toxic or abusive, you have a shelf, and when
mm,
something happens, you put it on the shelf, you put it on the shelf, and then eventually, you'll put one thing. To a lot of people, it's going to look like it's just one thing.
yeah.
She didn't get hired, that's why, she left.
Mm,
But for me, it was like a combination of different things. But yeah, not getting hired, and the mistreatment of like couldn't get interviews. I kept applying, nobody would give me an interview. Eventually got one interview out of like 6 or 7 jobs. um that and so my shelf broke, but
mm,
even then it took a while for the shelf to break. It
mm,
was how people treated me, even even after I accepted that I might never get hired and it's okay, I'll just serve.
mm.
I wasn't allowed to preach anymore. I didn't get the preaching license that they
Wow.
vote on you and to get, and I didn't. It was just and then I'd have people come up to me and be like, "Do you expect us to call you pastor now?" Like stuff like that.
Mm,
So my shelf eventually broke because of how people were acting
mm,
towards me, even after I had said to myself, okay, I'm not going to get a job, even though I'm qualified, but I'm going to stay. Because I really do believe in quite a lot of the doctrine. Where are you with the doctrine? Like when you left, did you kind of, how did your deconstruction go? Like, was it, because I know a lot of it was just, how people were treating you and how people treated others. Did you ever have a problem with the doctrine, and where are you now on that?
Don't know if I ever thought about the doctrine, to be honest with you. I can't say I thought of the doctrine as such. I think when I think I left church. I didn't leave God.
Yeah.
Right. Then I got involved with um I'm trying to say he wasn't a young man. I got involved with someone else. I was in a relationship. In fact, I was engaged being married to somebody else. He was a pastor of a different denomination. And of course, I came in, they were Pentecostal. I'm Adventist, or was Adventist, because by then I'd left. So I hadn't been in church for 2 or 3 years by that time. But they still saw that as being a threat. So they discouraged him and discouraged him and discouraged him until I think we split up, and then we talked it out and we decided that we were going to stay together. And then 1 week before the wedding, um he said no, basically. 1 week before the wedding, yeah. He said, no, don't want to be with you anymore. So at that point, I was like, hold on. This is kind of like history repeating itself, where I've come into the church, they don't know anything about me, but they've made all sorts of assumptions about me. What am I doing? Why am I putting myself through this? Or no, what is this all about? So I think by that time, I just slowly, I'm not even sure I really deconstructed in that sense, but I no longer felt that I needed God. I think I just wanted to just be. So
Yeah.
I just am.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I don't know whether I believe in God or not, but I don't know. I don't know where I am with that. And I don't need to ever question it, because nobody ever asked me that question. So I don't think about it, I don't worry about it. But like I said to you, when you went on your camping trip, and I felt so sorry for you, I don't pray, but I'm thinking
We survived. Thanks.
very well. Yeah, I don't pray. I don't pray.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because when bad things happen, because you've been so conditioned that when bad things happen, you pray, there's a little part of me that goes and I think, well, what am I doing this for? Why am I doing this? What is the purpose of this?
Yeah.
I think also because I don't do those things anymore, I don't feel anxious. I used to feel so anxious. Is God
Yeah.
hearing me? Does God understand? Am I doing it right? Does God care? All those questions would keep coming out. So when you're praying, everything will be rattling around inside you. Now, because I don't do any of those things, I no longer have that anxiety. I no longer feel that way. Things
Yeah.
happen. Yes, I get upset. Just calm myself down, just kind of think through things, process it. Usually the next morning something happens and it all works out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't feel the need for God in
Yeah.
that way, and I'm not
Yeah.
I did it in the right way anyway.
Yeah. And I
I've
hear,
not constructed it. I know I haven't. I've just kind of pushed it to one side.
just push it to one side.
I've just pushed it to one side and not thought about it. But
Yeah.
I know I don't pray anymore, and I
Yeah.
know I'd feel less anxious about things
Yeah.
because I'm not thinking, will he hear me? Will he understand?
Yeah.
All the other
Yeah.
1,000 questions that used to rackle through my brain when I
Yeah.
was.
I hear you. I hear you. I really, first of all, I want to just say, gosh, a week before your wedding, like,
It wasn't meant to be.
I know, but still, I'm glad that he didn't string you along and marry you and then, leave you.
Yeah.
But also, like, a week, way before a week before the
Mm,
wedding. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
And I don't know what I would do. That's just awful.
It was awful. I cried. I
Yeah.
was crying, especially on the day of the wedding, because everybody hadn't told anybody what had happened. So everybody's ringing me and texting me and saying, "Go happy wedding day," da, 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 da. And I'm
So
writing,
you didn't
"No,
uninvite people?
well, no, because it's a very we didn't have the funds, we didn't have we didn't have things. So
Yeah.
it was going to be a very quiet wedding with
Okay.
just the nearest and dearest. So it wasn't ever a big wedding day. Thank the
Okay.
Lord I didn't have a big elaborate wedding dress. Had a very simple dress, because we were going to the registry office as well because he although he was a pastor of a church, they didn't have a church.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to the registry office and get married. So it
Yeah.
was all simple, all very quiet. There was no big singing, big dancing, anything. It wasn't anything too much
Yeah.
but we had still, well, I had still spent money. So,
Yeah.
it's me who lost out on the money. But, but like I said, it was his senior pastor, a woman who kept on saying, I think some of this was because he was white and black, as you can see. I think some of it was racial, but some of it again was about we're Pentecostals, she's Adventist. We don't believe what she believes. And at the
Yeah.
time, I'd left church.
Yeah.
So I was open
Yeah.
to anything. I mean, there's certain things that I couldn't get down with, like speaking in tongues. I couldn't get down with that at all.
Yeah. I still haven't.
It bumped into my head so much that it wasn't real.
Yeah.
I get down with it. So when it started off, I'd be like, oh, okay. But everything else, I was kind of open to.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Like, we're gonna talk about racism soon. Don't want to rush. But church trauma, and this is why I think it's important to deconstruct, because I did what you did when I before I even left the Adventist church, I started visiting other churches. And I
Mm,
think it's because we're conditioned to believe that you have to belong to a church,
mm,
right?
mhm,
Um, because otherwise you really are a heathen. And I remember
mm,
when I did eventually leave the Adventist church, my therapist saying how lost I felt,
mm,
and how I was on a hunt for a new church. And she said, do you need the church? Like, what do you need from the church? And I was just saying, people, literally, because I love people. I've had I've had a misfortune with a lot of people, but generally I love people. I want people, and so I was just saying that, and she was like, "Yeah, but you can have that outside of the church," and she understood the dynamics. She's a mixed race woman, born and bred in Northern Ireland, so she understands the dynamic in a
mm,
lot of the churches here. Not
mm.
just the Adventist church, but the
Yeah,
rest of them, because of the
yeah,
whole sectarian thing,
yeah.
and a lot of them are really toxic. So she was like, you can get community outside of church and still be healthy, but I didn't listen. So I went to a few churches, and at the moment I'm in a really progressive one that I haven't committed to. So I
Mm,
go when I want. And I go because they do like grounding techniques, and they're LGBTQ plus affirming, and they
okay.
have tea and coffee and couches, and so it's just like it's a
Sounds so
morning and I
relaxed.
get the kids out. So I haven't fully committed because I'm scared of committing. But the last church I committed to, I was asked to share my story. And anytime I share my story, I'm a Black woman who's lived on the island of Ireland, for many years. And,
Mm,
racism is going to come up.
mm.
And it did. And the next week, the pastor preached about the evils of identity politics and proper shamed me. And he made sure to look at me when he
Yeah,
was.
to make sure you knew it was about you.
And I drove home crying, and I just thought, wow, I've done it again. Like, I've
Mm,
done it again. And it reminded me of the day that I left the Seventh-day Adventist church, because that week the pastor preached about children running on the pulpit. and my kids had been running on the pulpit the week before.
Mm.
Like, what is it with Christians and passive aggressiveness? Like, tell it to me,
Yeah,
come and talk to me,
yeah.
privately instead of preaching about it. But all that to say that I think once you've experienced church trauma in one church, it's so easy when we haven't fully deconstructed and healed from that first trauma to
Mm,
end up in other spaces that are really, really toxic. And
mm.
it's the same if you're born in trauma, you end up in a lot of places that are just
Yeah,
not safe. And
yeah,
I think when I look at the Adventist Church and how fast it has grown in Africa and Asia and South America, some people will say it's the Holy Spirit, but I also think that people who are traumatized cling on
mm-hmm,
so much to a
mm-hmm,
very black and white thinking. And
mm-hmm.
Adventism, says that, they're the true church, it's very like black and white,
Yeah,
like we have all the solutions, we have all the answers. And when you're a survivor of trauma, that sounds good and it feels
mm,
good because you have something to hold on to
mm,
and that you feel like you can control. Like all I have to do is keep the Sabbath, not eat pork, not do this, not do that. And but
mm.
that's just my little thought. But just from deconstructing, for me, I still do like a lot of Adventist doctrine. And I guess it's because, I did a whole master's
Mm.
in theology. So I still like quite a lot of the doctrine, but I think a lot of it is misused. And so on paper, it can look very good, but the way it's practiced is nowhere near,
Yeah,
what it's supposed to be.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's how I think that's how I feel about church. The way things were practiced,
yeah,
the way people were treated because of doctrine.
yeah,
We've not. I mean, we've not even. I mean, racism is down there, but I think we need to talk about relationships in church
yeah,
and what happens when relationships become public and
yeah,
things are thinking. The way people are treated then is
yeah.
ridiculous. Yeah, the
Mhm.
man gets off scot free, and the woman is tarnished. Yeah,
Always.